myself. You tore into. Now I'm someone else. Before you, I could recognize myself.
It's like so contagious.
Day. All right, so yikes, hold on. All right, so we're gonna try to finish this journeys out of, well, we're not gonna finish it, we're gonna continue it. Man, you know, I'd like to think that we live in a safe country, you know, sometimes. I'd like to really try to believe that. Travesty happened today. I would say, in my opinion, the conservative organizer Charlie Kirk was killed in a Utah campus shooting today. Again, I you know, this is not a political broadcast at all. We talk about the out-of-body experience quite a bit, but I don't know, just something about this whole thing just kind of devastates me a little bit. This guy's going around stirring up stuff on podcasts and YouTube and college campuses, saying stuff people don't like, which is fine. You should be able to say things people don't like. That's called freedom of speech. You should be able to listen. You don't have to listen to the guy, right? Like, it's, to me, it's just fear. Yeah, that's all it is. I'm not taking a side here. I think the guy's kind of an asshole sometimes, right? But I mean, he's a father too. He's got a family, and he's passionate about his message. He goes around college campuses to debate people, and because he says a lot of stuff people don't like, they shoot him for it. I mean, it's just sad. We still haven't gotten over that in this country yet. In this country. I mean, if you think about how many people have been shot for saying stuff that other people don't like, it's crazy. But I would challenge everybody, you know, to not stop saying how you feel about things and being real. Just because a few people out there are freaking insane and think that that gives them the right to try to execute somebody because someone says something you don't like. So what am I supposed to do? Go around shooting people that, I don't know, talk bad about Southerners, talk bad about fat people, talk bad about white people, talk bad, like, what am I supposed to do? Just shoot them? What happens if those people gather crowds and someone starts to follow them? Am I supposed to get afraid of that and shoot them? Like, this is insane, man. These people are insane. Anyways, crazy times. Can't believe that happened. I thought we were done with that kind of crap. Anyways, on a brighter note, prayers to his family and everybody that was involved with that. It's just Utah College campus of all places, man. Like, that's nuts. Anywho, I only talk about new stuff if I feel I should. And in that case, I feel like we should just at least acknowledge how insane something is. That freedom of speech isn't really free to some people. You're allowed to talk about certain things. If they don't like it, they'll just shoot you, I guess. All right. Enough of that. I don't want to get super pissed off. We're going to go through a few chapters tonight and Journeys Out of the Body. I also have the phone lines up, but I'll look at the chat too. We've done so many books on the broadcast, just so you know, it's not like an audio book. It's more like a investigation of the text, more for research purposes. So it's an open conversation. Always. Journeys Out of the Body by Robert A. Monroe. We're on chapter 8, and this one's called 'Cause the Bible Tells Me So. Let's see who jumped in the beginning real quick. What's up, MJ Wolf? What's up, my Cherie? Yeah, I wish I could say we lived in a safe country, but, obviously we don't still. If the human being has a second body, if that second body survives what we call death, if personality and character continue to exist in this new old form, what then? Again, an age-old question that pleads for an answer. To date, in 12 years of non-physical activities, I find no evidence to substantiate the biblical notions of God and afterlife in a place called heaven. Perhaps I have found this and simply haven't recognized it. It is quite possible. It may be that I'm not qualified, quote, qualified. On the other hand, much of what I have encountered could be some basics which have been distorted through hundreds of years. Let's start with prayer, which is supposed to be a direct communication with God. As we're taught to pray today, it is as if a chemical formula is recited without any knowledge of the original intent or meaning of the ingredients. Or the way our children sing London Bridge is Falling Down, with no knowledge of the original meaning of the song. Our entire civilization is filled with such irrational habits. Evidently, prayer is one of these. Now, this is all according to Robert Monroe. All right. Somewhere, someone knew how to pray. He tried to teach others, and a few learned the methodology. Others absorbed only the words, and the words themselves became altered and changed over the years. Gradually, the technique was lost until accidentally rediscovered periodically through the ages. In the latter cases, only rarely has the rediscoverer been able to convince others that the old established way is not quite right. This is all I can report. The old established way is not enough. Or as I say, perhaps I'm not qualified. Worse still, it may be that my prayer training was insufficient or improper. At any rate, it didn't work for me. Here's an illustration. On one non-physical excursion, I was speeding through nothing back to the physical with everything apparently well under control. Without warning, I rammed into a solid wall of some impenetrable material. I wasn't hurt, but I was utterly shocked. The material was hard and solid and seemed to be made of huge plates of steel overlapping slightly and welded together. Each had a slight curvature, as if part of a globe. I tried to push through it, but could not. I went up, down, to the right, to the left, and I was absolutely sure my physical body lay beyond this barrier. After what seemed an hour of scratching, clawing, and pushing at this barrier, I prayed. By the way, this sounds completely terrifying. It just does. I used every prayer I had ever learned and made up a few special ones. And I meant every word more than I had ever meant anything in my life. I was frightened. Nothing happened. I was still plastered against the barrier, unable to get through and back to my physical body. I panicked. I clawed, screamed, and sobbed. And after this proved futile, I finally calmed down only out of emotional exhaustion. Feeling lost, I lay there and rested, clinging to the cold, hard wall. I don't know how long I lay there until the ability to think objectively returned. But it did. I couldn't stay there forever. Or at least I didn't want to. It seemed an impossible situation, where before had I encountered an apparently impossible situation, I wonder. Now think about this. If you're out of body, right, and then you're in this place where you're trying to get back to your physical body, and it's like this metal globe or this impenetrable globe, and so no matter where you go, you can't get through the barrier back to your physical body. That'd be pretty freaky. That's what he's going through. I remembered years before, a friend and I had purchased an airplane whose flight characteristics we did not know. The only reason we bought this particular plane was that it was cheap and in good condition. After several practice flights around the field, we decided to take it up for acrobatics. With borrowed parachutes, we took off and headed up to around 10,000 feet. We took it through several lazy eights, a few sloppy loops, and several spins. Everything seemed all right, and after climbing back to altitude, we nosed the ship down slightly and popped stick and rudder to go into a snap roll. The next thing we knew, we were in a spin. We centered stick and forward, the accepted recovery procedure. It had worked before beautifully, but not this time. The spin became flatter, faster, and was developing a whip-like action. Opposite rudder against the spin burst of power. None had any effect on the spin. If anything, the spin worsened, and the ground was coming up fast. That sounds like something in the movies, man. You're just caught in a spin in an airplane. Bill looked around from the front of the cockpit. His face was white, and he yelled at me over the wind roar, "We better get out of here." I was ready to leave too, and the only thing that kept me there a few more seconds was the possible loss of the airplane for which I had saved so long. I reasoned we've tried everything except a procedure that violates the rules. The one thing not to do if you're in a spin, pull back on the stick. Well, what did I have to lose? I pulled back on the stick, and the ship straightened out of the spin immediately and gathered flying speed. I rolled it until the earth was where it belonged, and we landed safely and crawled out shakily and sat on the ground. We had fallen into an outside spin. Neither of us had seen such a spin before, much less tried one. I remembered the outside spin, and I tried to apply the concept as I lay there panting against this barrier. Forward, up, down, right, left, no good. There were just one remaining direction, although my knowledge said definitely it wasn't right. It couldn't make things any worse to try, so I did, and only a few moments later I was back in the physical body, shaken but safe. Which way? It was obvious in hindsight to go away from the barrier, back in the direction from which I had been traveling. Why this worked, I don't know, nor do I know what the barrier was. Perhaps it could be rationalized that prayer did work, and I did get back, didn't I? If it did, it was not in the manner that religion taught me. No helping angel came hurrying to give me aid and comfort. Another time I was visiting my brother and his family overnight. Shortly after retiring to the guest room, I went to bed for a much-needed rest. If it has any bearing, the headboard of my bed backed against the wall separating my room from that of my 4-year-old niece. Her bed was directly against the same wall. As I stretched out in the dark, the familiar surge of vibrations came, and I decided to slip out for a moment just to test being in this condition away from home. The moment I left the physical, I became aware of 3 beings in the room. I stayed cautiously close to my physical body as they came near. They started to pull at me, not hard, but deliberately, as if to see what I would do. So, yeah, I mean, imagine this, like you're trying to get out of body. You don't normally get out of body away from home. Now you're getting out of body, and now all of a sudden there's 3 beings just screwing with you, trying to pull you and do all kinds of stuff. It's probably pretty scary, too. Let's see. I stayed cautiously close to my physical body as they came closer. They started to pull at me, not hard, but deliberately, as if to see what I would do. They were having a good time at it, and I tried to stay calm, but there were 3 of them. I wasn't sure I could get back into the physical quickly enough before they pulled me away. So I prayed again. I used every prayer I knew. I asked God to help me. I prayed in the name of Jesus Christ for help. I tried a few saints I had heard from my Catholic wife. The result? My tormentors laughed loudly and worked me over more enthusiastically. Listen to him praying to his gods, one chuckled, most contemptuously. Listen to him. Holy shit, right? Can you imagine that? Like you're trying to get out of body, these three beings start messing with you, tugging on you, pulling on you, you go to pray, and they laugh at you. They say, listen to him praying to his God and laugh at him. That's gotta be that's gotta be pretty fucking scary. Pardon my French. Listen to him praying to his gods, one chuckled, most contemptuously. Listen to him. I think I got a little angry after that, and I began to push back. I got close to my physical body and just dove in. I wasn't exactly fighting back, but I certainly didn't remain passive. I sat up in the physical, most relieved to be back. Even as I sat up, I heard a child crying, and it was coming from the room beyond the wall. I waited several minutes, expecting my sister-in-law to come and calm the little girl and get her back to sleep. After some 10 minutes, the little girl, Jay, still had not stopped. So I got up and went out to the adjoining bedroom. My sister-in-law had the little girl, who was still sobbing deeply, in her arms and was trying to comfort her. I asked what was wrong and could I help. Well, she'll be all right in a little while, I think, my sister-in-law replied. She must have had a nightmare or bad dream, and I can't seem to wake her up. Oh. I asked how long the girl had been crying. Oh, just a few minutes before you came in. She isn't like this. She usually sleeps very soundly. I offered again to help if needed and went back to my room. Sometime later, little Jay quieted down and evidently went to sleep. Look, I bet you $1 to a dime that little girl saw those beings. I mean, when I was a kid, I saw all kinds of weird astral crap, especially like toddler age, you know. Was my niece's trance-like nightmare a coincidence, or perhaps some new praying technique is needed on my part? There are many more such incidents, but they followed much the same pattern when I attempted the conventional accepted approach to prayer. There are, however, more positive prospects to report regarding heaven and hell. If they exist, they are somewhere in Locale 2. In non-physical trips to Locale 2, often there is a, quote, layer or area which one must pass through, as mentioned earlier, and it seems to be the part of Locale 2 closest to the here now, and in some way most related. It is a gray, black, hungry ocean where the slightest motion attracts nibbling and tormented beings. This kind of contradicts, right? Like what a lot of people say. Oh, and you just get out of body. It's pleasant and a good time and stuff like that. That's a lot of people say that. Here's Robert Monroe saying like, hey, there's a place in Locale 2, which is a gray, black, hungry ocean where the slightest motion attracts nibbling and tormented beings. It is as if you are bait dangling in this vast sea. If you move slowly and do not react to the curious fish who come to investigate, you pass through with much incident. Move violently and fight back, then more excited denizens come rushing in to bite, pull, push, and shove. Holy hell. That's pretty scary too. So if you guys are ever out of body and you're in this area where like if you start moving around it attracts all this crap towards you, just remember, like, don't fight back, don't get crazy, or just pass through it, or it's just going to attract more. I mean, it sounds like astral catfish or something, you know. Could this be borders of hell? ? It is easy to conclude that a momentary penetration of this nearby layer would bring, quote, demons and devils to mind as the chief inhabitants. They seem subhuman, yet have an evident ability to act and think independently. Who and what are they? I don't know. I haven't taken the trouble to stay there long enough to find out. Only by terrified trial and error did I find the method to pass through in reasonable peace. In these worlds where thoughts are not only things, but are everything, including you, your poison or perfection is of your own making. If you are a remorseless killer, you may end up in that part of Locale 2 where all are of the same design. This truly would be hell for such people, for there would be no innocent, defenseless victims. Project this outward, and you can begin to perceive the myriad of variations. Your destination in the heaven or hell of Locale 2 seems to be grounded completely within the framework of your deepest, constant, and perhaps non-conscious motivations, emotions, and personality drives. The most consistent and strongest of these act as your homing device when you enter this realm. I'm sure of this because it always works this way when I have traveled non-physically in Locale 2. It works this way whether I want it to or not. The least stray desire at the wrong time or a deep-seated emotion I wasn't aware of diverts my trip in that like direction. Some of the resulting destinations have had all the aspects of hell to me. Others might possibly be construed as heaven, and some differ in practice only slightly from our activities in the here and now. So, if Locale 2 seems to have portions of hell and doesn't quite live up to our notions of heaven, what then? Where do we look for the guidepost? Where are the God and heaven that we worship? Have I missed something? And yet at times in visiting Locale 2, a very unusual event periodically occurs. It makes no difference where in Locale 2, but the event is the same. This is some weird shit right here. Probably, in my opinion, this thing that he's about to say is the weirdest thing, one of the weirdest things in this book. So this very unusual event occurs periodically in Locale 2. In the midst of normal activity, whatever it may be, there is a distant signal, almost like heraldic trumpets. Everyone takes the signal calmly, and with it, everyone stops speaking or whatever he may be doing. It is the signal that he, or they, is coming through his kingdom. There is no awestruck prostration or falling down on one's knees. Rather, the attitude is most matter of fact. It is an occurrence to which all are accustomed, and to comply takes absolute precedence over everything. There are no exceptions. At the signal, each living thing lies down, my impression is on their backs, bodies arched to expose their abdomen, not the genitals, with her head turned to one side so that one does not see him as he passes by. And the purpose seems to be to form a living road over which he can travel. I have gleaned the idea that occasionally he will select someone from the living bridge, and that person is never seen or heard from again. The purpose of this abdominal exposure is an expression of faith and complete submissiveness, the abdomen being the most vulnerable part of the body or the area that can suffer damage most easily. There is no movement, not even thought, as he passes by. Everything has come to a momentary standstill, full and complete while he passes. And the several times that I have experienced this, I lay down with the others, and at the time the thought of doing otherwise was inconceivable. As he passes, there is a roaring musical sound and a feeling of radiant, irresistible, living force of ultimate power that peaks overhead and then fades in the distance. I remember wondering once that what would happen to me if he discovers my presence as a temporary visitor. I wasn't sure I wanted to find out. Dude. So you guys, did you take all of that in? Like, that is crazy. So he says every now and then, I can try to like wrap this up. Every now and then he goes to this place where, let's say, everybody's kind of chilling in the astral realm, mostly dead people, right? Everybody's chilling, like maybe the noise of a cafeteria. Imagine that kind of energy going on. And then all of a sudden this thing shows up. And then everybody shuts up. Even he shuts up. Gets totally still. Nothing they can do about it. Absolutely nothing. It's inconceivable to do anything. And then they all lay on their backs, stick their stomachs up, is what he's saying, and turn their head to the side so whatever this thing is can crawl over them. While this thing is crawling over them, the closer it gets, it has this music that gets louder and louder and then fades away. And then he has an impression that this thing crawls over all these people's bellies and eventually like takes somebody away. And Robert is thinking, oh shit, like what if he realizes I'm just a person asleep, just kind of temporarily hanging out in this place? What would happen if he gets me? Several times. I wish he would tell me how many times is several, though, because that is so freaking trippy, man. Okay, after he is passing, everyone gets up again and resumes their activities. There's no comment or mention of the incident, no further thought of it. There is complete acceptance of the event as an ordinary part of their lives, and this is the great yet subtle difference. It is an action as casual as halting for a traffic light at a busy intersection or waiting at the railroad crossing when the signal indicates that a train is coming. You are unconcerned and yet feel unspoken respect for the power represented in this passing train. The event is also impersonal. Is this God or God's Son or his representative? Does that sound like God to you? It sounds like a freaking serpent or something. I don't know, man. 3 times I've gone to a place that I cannot find words to describe accurately. Again, it is this vision, this interpretation, the temporary visitation to this, quote, place or state of being that brings the message we have heard so often throughout the history of man. I am sure that this might be part of the ultimate heaven as our religions conceive it, but it must also be the nirvana or the samadhi or the supreme experience related to us by the mystics of the ages. It is truly a state of being, very likely interpreted by the individual in many different ways. To me, it was a place or condition of pure peace, yet exquisite emotion. It was as if you were floating in warm, soft clouds where there is no up or down, where nothing exists as a separate piece of matter. Well, that don't sound so bad. The warmth is not merely around you, it is of you and through you, and your perception is dazzled and overwhelmed by the perfect environment. The cloud in which you float is swept by rays of light in shapes and hues that are constantly changing, and each as good as you bathe in them as they pass over you. Ruby red rays of light, or something beyond what we know as light, because no light ever felt this meaningful. And all the colors of the spectrum come and go constantly, but never harshly, and each brings a different soothing or restful happiness. It is as if you are within a part of the cloud surrounding an eternally glowing sunset, and with every changing pattern of living color, you also change. You respond and drink into you in the eternity of the blues, yellows, greens, and reds, and the complexities of all the intermediates. All are familiar to you, and this is where you belong. This is home. As you move slowly and effortlessly through the cloud, there is music around you. It is not something of which you become aware. It is there all the time, and you vibrate in harmony with the music. Again, this is more than the music you knew back there. It is only those harmonies and delicate and dynamic melodic passages, the multi-voice counterpoint, the poignant overtones. It is only those that have evoked in you the deep, incoherent emotion back there. The mundane is missing. Choirs of human-sounding voices echo in wordless song. Infinite patterns of strings and all shades of subtle harmony interweave in cyclical yet developing themes, and you resonate with them. This to me sounds like being on Molly in a rave party, I gotta tell you. It does, I'm just saying. There's no source, or on DMT maybe, there is no source from which the music comes. It is there, all around you, in you. You are part of it, and it is you. It is the purity of a truth of which you have had only a glimpse. This is the feast in the tiny tidbits you tasted before back there and had made you hope for the existence of the whole. The nameless emotion, longing, nostalgia, sense of destiny that you felt back there when you stared at the cloud-layered sunset in Hawaii. When you stood quietly among the tall waving trees in the silent forest. When a musical selection, passage, or a song recalled memories of the past or brought forth a longing for which there was no associated memory. When you longed for the place where you belonged, whether city, town, country, nation, or family, these are all now fulfilled. I think I understand what he's talking about here. Like that nostalgia you feel in all of those situations, all of these are fulfilled here. You are home. You are where you belong, where you always should have been. Most important, you are not alone. With you, beside you, interlocked in you are others. They do not have names, nor are you aware of them as shapes, but you know them, and you are bonded to them with a great single knowledge. They are exactly like you. They are you. And like you, they are home. You feel with them like gentle waves of electricity passing between you, a completeness of love, of which all the facets you have experienced are but segments and incomplete portions. Only here the emotion is without need of intense display or demonstration. You give and receive as an automatic action with no deliberate effort. It is not something you need or that needs you. This reaching out thing that we do is gone. The interchange flows naturally. You are unaware of differences in sex. You yourself as a part of the whole are both male and female, positive and negative, electron and proton. Man, woman, love moves to you and from you. Parent, child, sibling, idol, and ideal all interplay in soft waves about you and in you and through you. You are in perfect balance because you are where you belong. You are home. Keep in mind, this guy, he's out of body, right? No drugs, no mushrooms, no Molly, no acid, no DMT. This is what he's experiencing in this place. Still yet, the thing crawling over everybody's bellies, despite all this beautiful stuff, is still weird, right? It is, just saying. So within all of this, yet not a part of it, you are aware of the source of the entire span of your experience, of you, of the vastness beyond your ability to perceive and or imagine. Here you know and easily accept the existence of the Father, or your true Father, the Father or the creator of all that is or was. You are one of his countless creations. How or why, you do not know. This is not important. You're happy simply because you're in your right place where you truly belong. Each of the 3 times that I went there, I did not return voluntarily. I came back sadly, reluctantly. Well, yeah, who the hell would want to leave that? Dude, every time I do this radio show, if I get too close to this microphone, I think it tickles my mustache, like I feel like a static electricity on it. Freaking drives me crazy. But seriously, like, who would want to leave that? I don't want to leave that. I would want to stay there forever. So each of the 3 times I went there, I did not return voluntarily. I came back sadly and reluctantly, and someone always helped me return. And each time after I returned, I suffered intense nostalgia and loneliness for days. I felt as an alien might among strangers in a land where things were not, quote, right, where everything and everyone was so different and so, quote, wrong when compared with where you belonged. Acute loneliness, nostalgia, and something akin to homesickness, so great was it that I have not tried to go there again. Was this heaven? Well, I mean, damn, dude, it sounds like heaven to me. It sounds like some form of a heaven, other than a weird snaky thing crawling over people's bellies. I mean, it sounds pretty cool to me. Once I tried to simulate there on this world, I remembered as a child swimming in a pool that had underwater deep-hued colored lights set in the walls. I remembered specifically which pool had featured such lights. Our country home had a swimming pool, so I set to work. We installed underwater lights and I used color on the lights. Try as I might, I couldn't get the deep hues that I remembered. Too much power was required. Also, we put in an underwater speaker so that you could lie in the water. Sound like Robert Monroe had some money, huh? With your ears submerged and listen to music from the system in the house. This worked quite well, but it was not there or even close to it. There was one particular item upon visiting the site of my childhood. The pool I remembered was there, but it did not have colored lights under the water. No one, including old friends who have swam with me in the pool, could remember this pool as ever having colored lights under the water. Reality. That's probably one of the strangest chapters in the book right there, chapter 8. I mean, everything was cool. Like, the whole thing about that chapter was, is there a heaven or hell? So he talks about these crazy, weird, like, beings in this one area that he goes to. He tries to pass through but not stay there. That seems to, I don't know, attract entities of some kind. And then this other area that sounds like a Molly rave party, or it really actually does sound like Nirvana or Samadhi. It's crazy. You think he would talk about that more, but he only really just discusses this in one chapter. What's up, Jenny? What's up, Dean? Bean Cooter? Mr. Magnetic Mustache? No, dude, it drives me crazy. It really does. Delina says, "This is nuts. Any God wanting to walk on me like I'm a sidewalk." No, yeah, see, like, think about that too. Imagine if that happened in real life, right? Imagine if that happened in real life. You know, like, say for instance, you're in a crowded area. You're on a playground, or I don't know, you're outside doing whatever in a park, and everybody's, jiving, doing their thing, and then everybody stands still like you're in the further. Nobody moves. Nobody says nothing. Everybody not only that, like they know not to move. And then everybody lays down and arches their stomach up and waits for this thing to crawl over them. And when it does, this music comes with it. And then he said it's just weird. He says that they get this idea that he is coming into his kingdom. So it makes you wonder, like, how we've talked about locale 1, locale 2, and locale 3 seems to be some other dimension or parallel world. But it makes you wonder, is locale 2 like the collective? Is this like a place where you go and your psychology and your emotions just affect everything? And I think it is. I think he actually talked about that. Okay. Oh man, we burned through a chapter and ain't even went in an hour yet. All right. Number 9, chapter 9, Angels and Archetypes. One of the greatest enigmas of this whole affair is that someone, or more than one, has been helping me from time to time in such experimentation. Perhaps they are with me every time, and I am just not aware of them. I do not know who these helpers are or why they are helping me. They certainly do not seem to be guardian angels, although a more conveniently oriented personality might interpret them this way. They do not always respond when I need help, nor are they always responsive to prayer. Mental anguish and screaming have sometimes brought one of them, and more often they help me when I do not ask for help, or again when I am not aware of asking. Their assistance seems to be more of their choosing and deliberation than mine. They are rarely friendly in the sense that we understand that term, yet there is a definite sense of understanding, knowledge, and purposefulness in their actions towards me. I couldn't say purposefulness. I feel no intent on their part to bring harm to me, and I trust their directions. Much of the help has been subtly applied. For example, the hands that boosted me up the hill to Dr. Bradshaw's house were obviously helping me to achieve what I desired. I did not see who was assisting me. However, just prior to the assistance, I saw someone sitting yoga fashion with robes and a headpiece. Was this the helper? In chapter 10, the robed man with the hauntingly familiar eyes and face, who responded to my anguished plea when I was trying to get rid of myself of parasites, paid little attention to my emotional distress. Yet he had obviously come to help. This is weird. Why does this say in chapter 10 if we're on chapter 9? So he came as a result of my problem. Still, he offered no words of comfort, nor did he attempt to calm or reassure me. I never saw the helper who took me on the voyage to visit Dr. Gordon in Locale 2. I felt his hands and I heard his voice, but no more. The same applied to the helper who a week later commented that I had already made the trip when I attempted to do so again. There is some inherent acceptance of the assistance without question, and rarely has it occurred to me at the time to turn and identify the helper. It seems a rather natural thing. The two young men took me to the apartment after the seance meeting do not seem to fit into this typical category here. There was a definite sense that they came for the particular purpose and nothing else, and this brings up the next peculiarity. Of all the helpers from whom I have obtained some repeatable identification, only one have I been able to identify a second time. In my visit to Agnew Bonson in Locale 2, someone held me in position to see him. The feeling of gentle but firm hands on each side of me was very strong, and the same hands turning me around to leave, much as one steers a blind person, could not have been more vivid. It was another case of a helper responding to a specific desire on my part. When I panicked, screamed, and prayed against the barrier on my way back, no help came. So when I was being teased and tormented by those entities, no help came. When I was attacked by the being so savagely, there was no help. More accurately, if it did, I was not aware of it. So what's the difference? How do they decide when to help and when to leave me alone? I don't know. And most of all, who quietly insisted that I return to the physical when I drifted in that seemingly eternal bliss? I don't know whether to be grateful or sad for that particular help. I don't classify the quote host in chapter 12 as one of the same helpers, yet he may well have been. So I guess he's teasing us to future chapters. Right? He is one of those whom I would have no difficulty recognizing if I saw him again. He was different, and then I did get an impression of a warm friendliness and a camaradereship. He spelled this wrong, I think, comradeship. But he was in some manner not quite the same as I, older, knowledgeable in another field. He was different and the same, in that he came forward and offered his help. This was one of the few times that the option was mine. And strangely, the other times I needed help badly, none appeared. Here's an example. So the wild experiences of seeming to be in someone else's physical body, on the surface, this would appear to have been a most mysterious or serious situation demanding immediate aid. But the notes show no indication whatsoever of anything other than extraction through my own efforts. There is no evident pattern as yet. Here are several of my other reports in the notes that may illustrate some hidden points about the helpers. Well, I would say one thing that's definitely weird about these helpers is they're all wearing freaking robes and like black garb and robes and shit, right? Like that's pretty weird. I wonder if his mind is doing that though. What's up, Doc? The doctor. September 14th, 1958. Early evening on the porch into relaxation system. Immediate high-frequency vibration. Experimented flipping in and out of the physical. On one had difficulty in re-entering. Two hands took my hips and rolled me into proper position. I mentally sent my thanks, but didn't know who it was. March 18th, 1962. E.W. was visiting us, and we both decided to rest before dinner, about 5 in the afternoon. We went into adjoining rooms. Almost immediately after I lay down, I heard voices, and it sounded as if E.W. was discussing something with someone else. At the time, I thought I was hearing him physically talking to the other person in the hall outside the door. I guess E.W. is just a made-up name. E.W. reported he went immediately to sleep, did not speak with anyone prior, and has no recollection of the event at all. But he's hearing him in the hallway for some reason, right? So immediately after hearing this muffled conversation, I lifted out of my body, and a voice spoke almost over my shoulder. "If you feel you must know, I guess we'll have to tell you." With this, someone took me by the arm, and I went along willingly, and we traveled at what seemed a long distance, and I ended up in a darkened house. My distinct impression was that it was a club, fraternity, or similar headquarters. There were quiet people in a room to the right, and I seemed to know that there were other people far upstairs somewhere. As I stood there waiting, what looked like a 16mm film projector started, and I saw a white light frame on a wall or screen, much the same shape as a motion picture, and in handwriting, black on the white, was this message: "For pure psychic results, take 6 drops of a chemical in a glass of water." I became excited at this and moved over to the projector to try and reverse it to read the message again so that I could be positive that I had read it correctly. But I kept fumbling for the reverse switch, but was unable to find it. And then the picture had gone by this time. I then saw what looked like film unwinding on the floor, and I thought I had broken the mechanism by tampering with it. This made me nervous, and I headed back for my body to avoid trouble, returned, and re-entered easily. So, I mean, we're starting to see a pattern here. Like, a lot of the stuff that Robert Monroe experiences when he's out of body makes no sense. And the stuff that, I mean, compared to the stuff we go through in this physical world, it makes no sense, right? It's like a crazy dream, but he's not really dreaming. May 3rd, 1960 in the afternoon. I lay there fully conscious, and vibrations speeded up to nothing but warmth sensations, eyes closed. I was about to lift out when 2 hands held a book in front of my closed eyes. The book was rifled, turned around on all sides so that I could see that it was a book. The book was then opened, and I started to read. The gist of what I read was that in order willfully to bring back a condition, it was necessary to recreate the feeling of a similar experience that occurred in the past, or something that was a part of your memory. I took this to mean that one should think of the feeling rather than the details of the incident. And several illustrations were given. Then gradually the book went out of focus as the vibrations faded. And as try as I might, I could not continue reading. And finally I sat up physically and made notes. March 9th, 1959, nighttime. As I lay there with the vibrations strong in the dark, the special black darkness, I could see with my closed eyes, and he has "see" in quotations. The darkness grew brighter in one spot as if clouds were parting or rolling back, and an unfurling, and finally a white ray of light came through from somewhere above my head. I could still hear the noises of family activity in the house and was still completely aware of time and space. I was still home and completely conscious. I became excited but managed to keep in stasis. A small mountain peak seemed to grow in the center of the white ray, just where it hit the clouds. I gathered courage and asked for the fundamental answer to my basic questions. I don't know why I did, but it seemed to be what I should do. In a rich, deep voice, yet not a voice. A voice, yet not a voice, and certainly not my conscious mind, as I was waiting expectantly, answered, "Are you sure you want to know?" And it came from the light ray. I replied that I was sure. "Are you strong enough to take the true answers?" There was a little inflection and no emotion in the delivery, and I replied that I thought I was. And I waited, and it seemed a long, long time before the voice spoke again. "Ask your father to tell you of the great secret." I started to ask exactly what was meant, but one of the family came up the stairs noisily and switched on the light in the hall outside my room. And with the click of the light, the white ray of light faded slowly, and no matter how hard I tried to make it stay, and the clouds went from gray to black, and when the clouds had faded completely, I opened my eyes. And there was absolutely no transition from vision to sleeping to waking. I had been awake the entire time, as we define it, from all indications throughout the period. It was indeed a moving experience, but not classified as an out-of-body experience. Since then, I've explored this in two directions. I've tried to recreate the experience without success. And second, I wrote to my physical father, who was still alive and very interested in these events. I posed the question without giving him the source, and he wrote back an elusive answer, stating that there were perhaps 100 or a half hundred, and asking which one I wanted. The other, quote, father has yet to give me the answer either. Maybe he wasn't talking about his dad then, I guess. I don't know. The voice. March 15th, 1959, nighttime. I'm trying to follow up, and here's what took place. As I lay down in the relaxing procedure, I mentally repeated the words, "Father, guide me. Father, tell me the great secret." And after several minutes, there was a sudden blackout, and I was standing in a room with a high beam ceiling. I left the house and started across a platform to some kind of waiting conveyance, kind of like a train, and then stopped and turned. Someone had called to me. A tall, thin, rather dark-skinned woman in a long, straight dress or robe stood almost beside me. My first impression was that she was Negro with small and even features, dark, straight hair, and evenly cut bangs across the forehead. Just say she was black. Is that what they said back in the 60s? She was Negro? You just say, my first impression was that she was a black lady, like you would say a white lady. I don't know, it's just weird to me. That was my first impression. Small and even features, dark straight hair, and evenly cut bangs across the forehead. But in retrospect, I realized from the description she could have been Middle Eastern or Egyptian, but not Oriental, as I would have noticed the eye structure. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. The way he was explaining the bangs and all that stuff, it sounds Egyptian to me. She told me that I had done something wrong, and the implication being in a wrong manner rather than evil. I asked her what it was, and she said she should show me, or she would show me. And with that, we started to move and walked around the corner of a large building. We stepped into a large paved courtyard. We stopped, and it was exactly as if we were watching a three-dimensional life-size motion picture in full color. A group of people was standing to the left, and they gave the impression of authority. To the right, lying in the courtyard, was a small, dark-haired girl who looked around 12 or 13 years old. She seemed bound or helpless in some way, and I was in the scene, and I was simultaneously standing beside the woman watching. I could sense every action of the, quote, I in the scene and every emotion. Dude, it sounds to me like this being, this Egyptian woman thing, is like showing him kind of like this Scrooge thing in the Christmas Carol, you know. The men of authority told the I that was in the scene that he must perform certain harmful functions on the girl. He felt that he shouldn't do this, and the girl pleaded with him not to. He turned back to the authorities to avoid carrying out their orders. But the authorities were very casual about the whole affair, especially the girl's tears. They stated that if he did not perform the function, which he has religious in question mark, others were arriving soon and they would do it instead. They added that it would be better for the girl if he performed this act instead of others, that it would be less harmful to the girl. Reluctantly, the I in the scene turned and followed out the orders of the authorities, and a few moments later, the woman led me out of the courtyard and we stood on a platform again. I lost contact with the I in the scene the moment we turned away. Now do you understand? She asked. I dazedly stated that I did not, and she looked at me steadily, rather sadly, and turned away. Not knowing what to do, I thought of the physical, took a long time getting back, and finally re-entered. I sat up and thought about this one for a long time. Who was the woman? And what was the great secret? And looking at my own life history here, I'm beginning to know. So what did the I mean, I've read the other books. I know where this goes, but like in this book, if you just read this book, like what did the I do to the little girl? Did he kill her, rape her, murder her, all of the above? Whatever he did, it sounded like a ritual, some kind of weird, ancient sacrifice of some kind or some shit. It sounded really weird. Wouldn't that be freaking crazy, man? Like, say you went out of body and some being showed up and it's like, hey, I'm going to show you the scene because you're asking for the secrets to the universe. And then they take you to this place and they show you a scene where you're there, but it's not really you as you know you, but you know it's you. And you're about to perform some kind of sacrifice on a child. And then the being's like, now do you understand? I mean, what the hell? This is how weird this book is. This is why I think a lot of the stuff that he's talking about really happened during his conscious experiences, because this is freaking crazy. Okay, anyways, I'm rambling shit. August 18th, 1961 in the afternoon. The hands and the hook, or the hands and the book again. So the hands are there holding him, put the book in front of him. This time in the office, 3 in the afternoon, rainy, humid weather, if that has any meaning. The vibrations were present, completely conscious and awake. I checked and tested by opening my physical eyes several times and looking at the clock. Time passage was as if it should be. But again, the hands placed the book before my closed eyes, and the book was turned over, rifled, and held in many positions and very obvious movements to make sure I recognized it as a book. I thought of trying to see the title on the end of the book, and promptly the end was held for me to see, but the print was too small. Or I was too myopic. Try as I might, I could not read it. So finally I gave up, and the book was opened, and I saw both printed pages. Again, I tried to read it, but it was just out of focus. Finally, I mentally suggested that I might be able to read if it took one letter at a time. In response, a letter jumped out of a line, and I just barely saw it as it flew by. I checked and rechecked carefully and laboriously, and got 4 words. Quote, evoke unhappy beings by ... end quote. I tried and tried to read more, but evidently I concentrated too hard, as it only became more difficult. I noticed the large, white, billowy clouds overhead, and this distracted me. The rain had stopped. It was clearing, and I wanted to go out and soar up among the mountains and valleys in the sky. And with this, I started to lift out slowly. The hands closed the book, took it away, and a tolerant, amused, and friendly thought sprung into my mind. Well, if the soaring is that good, go do it. And it was as if a teacher had just given up on me for the moment, trying to keep the attention of a child too restless to concentrate. I soared out through the door, up into the sky, had a wonderful time among the clouds, and returned without incident. The clouds truly were there after I set up physically just as I had experienced them, although it had been cloudy when I started the experiment. Someday, perhaps the helpers will identify themselves, but I suspect the answer may be surprising. Man. So these helpers keep putting this book in front of him, and then he has to like really focus or like talk himself into being able to read this damn thing, which is crazy. But this time he's like, dude, I just want to fly in the clouds. And the clouds were exactly as they were with that he saw before he fell into this out-of-body state. All right, so we went through 2 chapters in 1 hour, so we might as well get deeper into it. Got to take a short break, though. We are at the top of the hour. Restroom break. You guys got any questions, too? Or even, like, I have the phone lines up. If you do want to call in and say something about the book, maybe something you think I didn't notice or something that didn't get said or was said in the chat room, whatever, you can text into. It's 501-777-5631. Deeper into the Late Night, Journeys Out of the Body by Robert Monroe, and it just is going to get weirder, I got to tell you. Be right back.
Made up of Brexit disaster. Pushing and pulling, conservative rolling, unlike plastic, easier to see through, just like glass with no ring. Softer and sadder you sing. Sexy, sexy, do your thing. Learn to be shy and then you can sting. Plexi, plexi, pin don't shatter. Once you're broken, shape on that. You're wrecking your mind by killing the time that kills you. But you can't blame the time, cause it's only in your mind. Quickly, quickly go and then you'll know it's such an awkward show to see. And everyone you wanted to know, and everyone you wanted to meet, have all gone away. Oh, they've all gone away. And now you're breaking your mind by killing the time that kills you. But you can't blame the time, cause it's only in your mind.
It's like, should change the name of this show to freaking ebook radio or something, right? By the way, the new website is just fringe.fm, so I decided to put everything at fringe.fm if you want to check out the LTV store. Trying to get the radio station back up, so eventually that will turn into like the radio page, because I just miss being able to play what music I want to play. I'm pretty limited here on YouTube, so whatever. Love radio, whether it's dying or not, we'll keep doing it. All right, so the next chapter in Journeys Out of the Body is intelligent animals. And I really don't think this is about animals, by the way. It's important to know what he's about to talk about, because I'm sure everyone is concerned about what types of beings are in the astral realm, right? So this one's called Intelligent Animals. Throughout man's history, the reports have been consistent. What's going on here? Oh, yeah. Sorry, I got a Discord call. Throughout man's history, the reports have been consistent. There are demons, spirits, goblins, gremlins, and assorted subhuman entities always hanging around humanity to make life miserable. Are these myths, hallucinations? And for once, suppose we don't dismiss the topic before we take a good long look. And perhaps all such things do originate in the imagination. The question is, from what source does the imagination conjure up these beings? The following excerpts from the notes offer several possibilities. What's up, Bryce? What's going on, brother? I'm live on the air reading Journeys Out of the Body, man. It's cool. Have you read this book like all the way through it? Oh, well, we're about to get into intelligent animals, so chime in if you feel like something's weird enough to chime in about. I'm down for it. April 18th, 1960 in the morning. Let's see, let me make sure you guys can hear Bryce. You don't think, there he goes. I lay down on the couch around 10 and started fractional relaxation. I hate when he does this. Like, he says all these methods, but doesn't explain what he's doing. I think he's talking about parts at a time. But the room was bright in morning daylight, and halfway through the second time around, the vibrations started. And after a moment of tuning, in quotations, which he doesn't really talk about, tuning with my jaw, I think that's resonant tuning is what he's talking about. I opened my physical eyes to see if the vibrations would continue, and they did, with physical eyes open. I decided to try and lift out to see what happened to my vision. The clock was in full view. My time orientation was normal, according to the second hand, and I was just about 8 inches over the physical when I saw a movement out of the corner of my eye. Walking up beside my body was a human-appearing body. It was just a human-appearing body. I could see only the lower half with my head in the position on its side, and by turning my eyes to the right. It was nude, no clothes, and male. He seemed in size to be about 10 years old, some 3 feet tall, thin legs, little pubic hair, and undeveloped genitals. That is just so freaking weird, man. Calmly, as if it were a daily occurrence, like a boy swinging onto his favorite horse, he swung a leg over my back and climbed on me. I could feel his legs around my waist and his small body pressed against my back. I was so completely surprised that it didn't occur to me to be afraid, and perhaps his size had something to do with that. But I waited rigidly, and by rolling my eyes to the right, I could see his right leg hanging over my body, less than 2 feet away. It looked like a perfectly normal 10-year-old boy's leg. I was still hovering just out of the physical and cautiously wondered who and what this was. He, in quotations, seemed completely unaware that I knew of his presence, or if he was, he didn't care. And I felt that I didn't want to confront whoever he was in this environment where he was obviously more at home than I, so I retreated quickly back into my physical body, cut down the vibrations, and started to write these notes. It's crazy that I'm reading this, like, to think that he just wrote these notes, like, right after that happened. I don't know what it was, but I realized that I simply didn't have the courage to turn around and get a good look at him, if I could have. It was certainly humanoid in form, but upon reflection, it didn't have the feeling of a human intelligence. It, or he, seemed more animal or somewhere in between, and I felt insulted at the complete assurance with which he came over and just climbed on my back. I'd feel pretty insulted too. He seemed confident that he would not be detected, and perhaps through long association with humans to whom he was invisible. If it was a hallucination, that's a very real imaging in broad daylight, with the second hand of the clock sweeping and with two senses reporting. April 28th, 1960, nighttime. About 7:30 in the office, I went through the count-out procedure, and the vibrations came in nicely. I started out carefully and felt something climb on my back, and I remembered the little fellow from before and certainly didn't want to try to go somewhere with him hanging on my back. I let the vibrations continue and reached down my side to get a hold of his leg, but not sure that my non-physical hands wouldn't go right through it. I was quite surprised when my hands did touch something, and the consistency felt something much like flesh, normally body warm and somewhat rubbery. It seemed to stretch. I pulled, and the more I pulled, the more it stretched, and I finally pulled what I thought was all of it off my back except for a leg, which seemed to be under my body. I finally got that out too, and pushed the entire mass onto the shelf beside the couch. It seemed very much alive. It seemed to be trying to get back on me, and I had to hold it away. It got to be quite a struggle. No viciousness on his part, just an effort to get back on top of me. And I was starting to get a little panicky. I was in over my head again, and I thought of lighting matches and trying to burn him up, to do something, anything. There seemed no way to prevent him from climbing back on top of me until the moment I re-entered the physical. Having talked the last episode over with various people, I followed their various instructions, so I tried to stay calm, but it wasn't easy. I crossed myself several times with no effect. I repeated the Lord's Prayer fervently, but that didn't hold him at bay either. And then I screamed for help. Then, as I was trying to hold off the first, a second one climbed on my back. Holding the first off with one hand, I reached back and yanked the second one off me and floated over into the center of the office, holding one in each hand, screaming for help. I got a good look at each. As I looked, each turned into a good facsimile of one of my two daughters. The psychiatrist will have a good time with this one. But I seemed to know immediately that this was a deliberate camouflage on their parts to create emotional confusion in me and call upon my love for my daughters to prevent my doing anything to them. The moment I realized the trick, the two no longer appeared to be my daughters. Desperate for a solution, I thought about fire, and this seemed to help a little. However, I got the impression that they were both amused, as if there was nothing I could do to harm them. By this time, I was sobbing for help. Imagine what this would look like if you could see a picture of this, right? This is freaking crazy. Then I saw someone else come up out of the corner of my eye. I first thought it was another one, but this was very definitely a man. He simply stopped a short distance away and watched what was taking place with a very serious expression on his face. I got a very good look at him, and first his eyes were very familiar to me. They reminded me somewhat of a paternal cousin, light in color, a little sunken. He had his hair cut evenly around his head, including bangs across his forehead and short across the pate. It says pate. Almost bald. He wore a dark robe. See, more dark robes. He wore a dark robe down to his ankles, and I could not see his feet. My first reaction was that he'd come to help the entities, and that frightened me even more. I was still sobbing when he slowly approached us, and I was down on my knees, arms outstretched, holding off the two little beings from me. The man was very serious, spoke not a word to me, nor did he even seem to look in my direction. When he came close, I stopped my struggling and sank to the floor, pleading for help. Still with no recognition of me, he picked up each of the little beings, cradled one in each arm, and looked down at them. And as he held them, they seemed to relax and go limp, limbs and necks just drooping. Sobbing my thanks, I moved over to the couch, slipped into the physical, still feeling the vibrations, and sat up physical and looked around, and the room was empty. After a 24-hour contemplation of the event, I have at least some speculation. There is the possibility that the entire thing could have been a hallucination or a dream superimposed over my complete consciousness. But if so, I can see how those with paranoia have great difficulty in choosing which is reality. If it is symbolism, it is fairly evident. The entities around me are no more than a product of me. But the visualization of them as my children is pretty hard to interpret in any other way to show that they are mine. I created them, my children. So therefore they belong to me and are neither good nor bad. I still don't know what they are, though. Are they disassociated parts of me or thought entities I have created from continuing thought patterns habitually? What do I do about them? Who does the man in the robe represent? This will take more than 24 hours to understand. However, the next time, if there is one, I certainly will try to maintain a more calm objectivity, less fear, and an analytical approach. Well, that's some scary. You would think like two little weird beings that he's freaking out, man, screaming, crying, sobbing, trying to fight these things off of him, praying. And then this like robed figure, another robed figure, comes over, picks him up, and they just go limp or like lifeless when he picks him up. Trippy, man. May 21st, 1960, nighttime. I was lying deeply relaxed, late evening in the bedroom. The vibrations started evenly, and I quickly noticed a small leg thrown over my body. Non-physical, I assume. I felt the small body hanging onto my back, and carefully I just reached around, non-physical, ? And felt the small back superimposed on mine. I patted the little shoulder gently, intending to be understanding, and carefully lifted the small body and pushed it away from mine. I waited, and it didn't come back or attempt to come near. Not wanting to push my luck, I re-entered the physical, sat up, and made these notes. May 27th, 1960. Well, it seems like if he doesn't panic that it gets him off of him, right? But every time he panics, it makes it worse. Right? I think so. May 27th, 1960, nighttime. After lifting out, again, felt what I knew to be one of the rubbery entities on my back. No words or actions, just the small body clinging warmly to my back. This time I did not get too frightened and managed to pull the thing slowly. I pulled and called to God to help me, and at the insistence of several people who are more theologically inclined than I, again the thing stretched as I pulled, but didn't come off completely. I remembered the visualized thought of fire, and that it hadn't seemed much use, but had helped a little. But this time, I tried thinking of electricity. I visualized 2 pieces of highly charged wire, and I mentally stuck them into the side of that part of the entity that had pulled off. Immediately the mass deflated, went limp, and seemed to die. And as it did, a bat-like thing squeaked past my head and went out the window, and I felt that I had won. I felt deep relief and went back down into the physical, reintegrated, and sat up physically. This is freaking wild, man. You know, I've read this book and listened to it so many times, but actually like reading it, be honest with you, I've listened to it so many times. But reading the notes is pretty trippy because, you know, like this is exactly what he wrote after he woke up. The stuff that we're reading right here. August 25th, 1960, nighttime. It happened again, this trip. Just as I was getting underway, several things attached themselves to various parts of my body. I say things because it was in total darkness and I wouldn't or couldn't see, and they seemed almost like small fish, about 8 or 10 inches long, and they attached themselves like the parasitic suckerfish in the ocean. I pulled them off and pushed them away as best as I could, but they or others came back immediately. They weren't vicious, just troublesome. Finally, I went back into the physical to get rid of them. November 3rd, 1961, nighttime. I discovered something new about these suckers. There's almost a layer of them. Sometimes you pass through it, but most of the time you don't, or you move through so fast it's not noticed. But this time I stopped right in the middle of the layer of, I guess as the fish came clustering around, attracted by me. And instead of reacting as before, I simply waited, completely immobile. And after a few moments, they detached themselves and moved away. And then there was nothing, just blackness. I started to move, and back they came. I stopped, waited, and again they moved away. But this time I moved slowly. Only 1 or 2 came back, but that is all. I then went upward and on to the other places. It was as if I were bait in an ocean of fish. July 13th, 1960, nighttime. This must be recorded, as it may contribute in some way. In the hotel room in Durham with my wife in bed beside me late at night, I was just about to fall asleep when I sensed someone or something in the room. Without realizing at first what happened, I rushed up out of bed to defend myself and my wife. Immediately, I was attacked by something I couldn't see in the darkness. It fought at the animal level. For example, it tried to bite and scratch, and for what seemed an eternity, we fought in 3 dimensions through the room. I could not see in the darkened room, or were my eyes just closed? I don't know. And it was only through sheer determination that I fought it step by step over to the window and hurled it out. It apparently had no human or intelligence characteristics. It seemed pure animal and about 4 feet long, like a large dog. By the window, after disposing of it, I turned and realized for the first time that I was not in my physical body. My hand was right through the closed window. So I floated over to the bed, and there were 2 bodies lying under the covers. I moved close to the watch on the night table and could see by the luminous dial that it was 2:35. And I remembered that I was closest to the night table, and floated over, went down, rotated, and was back, quote, in my physical body. I sat up physically, and the room was quiet, dark, and empty. I looked at the watch on the night table. The time was about 2:38. So he's fighting beings now, man. This one had freaking teeth or something. October 27th, 1960, nighttime. I went to bed tired, late, at around 1:30 a.m., and mentally set myself to have no activities just as I started to sleep. No conscious lap in sequence, no separation from the physical was noticeable, but I did feel a sense of release just prior. I was attacked by something. It had no apparent personality, nor was I able to see it. However, I knew this one was incredibly vicious, this one, with an intent to take something that was mine, which first required getting rid of me. Not necessarily the physical I, but the I who has the ability to act independently of the physical body. This struggle was not like fending off an animal. It was a no-holds-barred affair, silently, terrifying, fast, and with other seeking out any weakness on my part. I did not fight back savagely at first because I was bewildered. I merely tried to defend myself. However, the thing fighting me seemed to move from nerve center to nerve center, and some of the holds and pressures it applied were excruciating. What does he mean, nerve center to nerve center? Is this like astral being put him in like grapple holds? Is it putting him in wrist locks and shit? It moved from nerve center to nerve center, and some of the holds and pressures it applied were excruciating. I knew that if I did not fight back, I would lose, and losing seemed as vital as losing existence. I then started to fight back with equal intensity, savagely, and with desperation. The thing fighting me knew every weak spot and used them. We fought for what seemed like hours, and gradually I felt I might truly lose. I felt that this couldn't go on forever, and realized that I was somehow out of the physical body. Still fighting, I steered the battle in the direction of my physical body, and when we were very close and directly over it, I dropped back in, and it was the only way I could think to end the fight without losing. I opened my eyes physically and sat up. The room was quiet and empty. The bedclothes were still undisturbed, so evidently there was no actual physical motion involved. My wife slept beside me undisturbed. I got up and walked around the room, looked in the hall, and everything appeared normal. It could have been a dream, but if so, it was the most vivid and certainly did not follow the usual pattern of dreams that I have. I have long come to recognize pure release type dreams which reflect the day's tensions or long felt inner anxieties which can be likened to multiple feedback or maybe monkey chatter. The superimposure of the room perfectly as the background for the action plus conscious control of action tends to negate the dream concept though. And after some 20 minutes of calming myself down, I returned to bed. I was naturally reluctant immediately to try to sleep again. I did not want a recurrence of the fight. I knew of no way to prevent it, and I tried what seemed to be the only answer. The alternative was to stay awake all night, and I was much too tired. I lay there and repeated, quote, "My mind and body are open only to constructive forces. In the name of God and good, I'm going into the normal, restful sleep." End quote. I did, and awoke, at my usual time in the morning, and before sleep came, I had repeated the phrase at least 20 times. These are freaky events, man. I've talked to so many people about out-of-body experiences, and most of them are like, oh, it's nothing. But what Robert's going through in these chapters is pretty freaky. The use of such phrasing indicates the seriousness and concern I felt at the time, which will be recognized by those who know me well, and that I felt the need to look for help and protection in the manner that I did. In truth, there was no alternative whatsoever. And in retrospect, I still cannot find an alternative, nor do I know of any method, place, person, religious practice that I would be sure of, drug, or anything else in my fund of knowledge, experience, and information that would absolutely guarantee protection against whatever attacked me. However, there must be something other than the pure fighting back in self-defense, even if you don't know what you are fighting. It was the same defense mechanism you would use if you were attacked by an animal at night in the jungle. You don't stop to find a way to fight in the middle of the fight. You don't stop to find out what attacked you. You fight to save yourself. And with what you have now, the moment the animal attacks, that's all you can do. You fight desperately, not thinking at the time how to fight, why you fight, or whom you're fighting. You have been attacked, and the unprovoked attack in itself seems to indicate to you that whatever is attacking you is not good, or else it would not attack you in this manner. Defense is automatic, instinctive, with no thought except survival, which is based on the premise that it is wrong to surrender to someone or something whose qualities, apparent unprovoked, attack blind desire to kill, you abhor. So, do you guys want to have an out-of-body experience now? What about you, Bryce? You still there, man? You want to have one now? That sounds freaky, man. Really freaky. I don't know if Bryce is with us or not. Let me see if he messaged me. No, he might be there. Just can't hear him. But I'm just going to tell you guys this flat out, though. Like, I've never, ever had anything attack me like that. So I came out of body once, and I had, man, my eyes are really like red right now. I swear I haven't been smoking weed. But I came out of body once, like halfway out where my waist is. It was just weird because I hit the vibratory state and I was having a hard time getting out. So I got kind of frustrated and kind of shoved my way out about halfway where my waist was, but my legs were still stuck. And the only thing that I ever came in contact was with these like blobby things. And they just instantly kind of shoved me back in my body. But that's it. Nothing like what he's talking about. This is crazy. The doctor says, Joe, what did he do to attract these entities? I think he's playing with his fears, man. Like in the past 3 chapters, he, he's debating God and angels and heaven and hell. And you can kind of see like the first struggle that he had with an entity kind of led to bigger and bigger struggles. So I think that might have been his fear. And if you're an occultist, if you're that part of the underground and you're an occultist and you do that void walking a little bit, you know that anything that you do in the astral, what they call light up, occultists will say light up, right? Like if you ever seen that movie Dark Song where he says, well, when we do this part of the ritual, we'll really start to light up. Well, they believe that the more you evoke things, the more you light up in the astral. So all the little entities that are all around us in the astral realm can see you and are drawn to you. Kind of like when you go out to, a pond or something and you just throw dog food out into the pond and all the fish start coming towards it and biting it, you know. So I think that it's possible that he did something that started attracting all this shit to him. Like he's really lit himself up in the astral. And when you do that, I mean, just about anything is going to be attracted to you, you know. This is why, man, I've been saying for a while now that if you separated the experiencers, like the out-of-body experiencers, Buellman, Monroe, Robert Bruce, Thomas Campbell, you took all these guys and their experiences with their conscious explorations, and then you took the best, not the worst, That's a tough term. The best of the occultists or ceremonial magicians, there are parallels that both of these people are talking about, man. They're just talking about different, they just call it different things, you know. I still don't know about the snake that crawls over people's bellies, though. This is a lot of weird stuff. Maybe that's why I'm attracted to this book so much. Damn, I got one of those weird, like, warped bottles of water. When you set it down, it won't stand up and it just falls over. What was it about him that made him want to keep going? My OBs were never like that. Yeah, man, like, mine weren't never that bad. I don't know why, like, he wanted to keep going. Well, you have to understand, too, he's also going through a thing where, like, I think he's just having so many out-of-body experiences that he can't really help it sometimes, you know. The fight with that last thing that he's talking about, that was like a no-holds-barred, whatever, that would keep me out of body for a while. But remember, think about the dates, too. There's a lot of time in between these dates that he's notating. All right, let's see if we can get through this one, you know. That was 3 chapters. We might be able to get through a 4th before the show's over. Chapter 11, Gift or Burden. Early in the experimentation, a side effect began to manifest itself. It was not an out-of-body activity as such, but took place in states of deep relaxation prior to any separation. It is evidently called in the trade precognition. As I was lying down, my mind stilled and body relaxed without my volition, the vision would occur. He has vision in quotations. There would be a hissing sound, localized in the forebrain, and I would get the sensation of a small rectangular door, hinged at one end, swinging downward to an angle of about 45 degrees, and this exposed a perfectly round hole. And immediately thereafter I would see and semi-experience an event or incident like a dream, except that I retained all of my consciousness and sense awareness. The dream would be superimposed directly over outside stimuli, so I could perceive both quite readily. I could not and cannot produce the effect at will. It merely happened or was triggered by some non-conscious mechanism. At first, I paid no particular attention to the phenomenon, attributing the dream visions to release of material from the unconscious. A major event brought it strongly to my attention. It is important enough to take directly from the notes. Yeah. Night Shine. Yeah, man. That's it. That's what he's doing. July 5th, 1959. During the early morning, the valve opened again, and what I saw has concerned me only because it was so vivid. I was about to board a commercial airplane, and standing by the door of the plane, waiting, was D.D., a man I've known for more than 10 years. I got on the plane and took a seat, and I noticed that there were plenty of seats, and the plane was almost ready to go. So this is like a precog thing. I don't think he's out of body. So I was sure my friend would make it aboard. I noticed a group talking up in the front near the door, and they joined a young black man who had just come in the door. They were very jolly and were glad that the young black man was going along, and the group was composed of 2 older black men, an older white man, and the young black guy. And they noticed that the plane was about to leave, so they all went down the aisle past me and took their seats. I leaned forward to see if my friend would get on, and in doing so, I became aware that the woman in front of me was agitated. Just as the plane was starting, my friend got aboard and took a seat, and I was about to get up and go over to join him when the plane started to move, and then I sat back. The plane started down the runway and seemed to take a long time to get off, and I grew a little tense. But we finally took off, and we climbed low over boulevard streets, winding with cloverleaf intersections. We stayed at low altitude, and the plane climbed very little. In a few moments, I heard the stewardess speaking through the plane speaker system. She stated that in a few minutes, the pilot would decide whether to take the plane on one of the 2 routes, the one to the left, going around, or under the wire route. He has under the wire in quotations. After a few moments' wait, I noticed that the plane passed a given point, low over a city, and I realized before the hostess spoke again that we were taking the under the wire route. When the hostess announced it, her voice seemed a bit too light and too casual, and I could sense a slight tension in her, too. Looking out the plane window, I saw the area ahead with wires stretched out in every direction. The plane approached and went under the wires, staying very low. I was tense and watched ahead, looking for openings in the wires that we could climb up through. Then up ahead, I could see, this sounds like a dream. I'm just going to be honest with you. It sounds like a weird dream. But then up ahead, I could see the end of the wires over us, and there was sunlight beyond. And I began to relax slightly because it looked like we were going to make it. At the moment, the plane dropped suddenly and bounced against the street. As it did, something broke off the plane very near me, and I jumped or fell to the street some 6 or 8 feet below me. I watched where I had fallen as the plane moved upward and away from me after the bounce, and then plunged off to the right and into an empty space between 2 buildings. Huge clouds of smoke partially obscured the crash. My first reaction after the crash was to thank God for the miracle that saved me. But the second was that my family would be worried because they knew I had taken this flight and that I should get word to them. The third thought was that I should hurry over to the wrecked plane to try and save some of the others, and even though I knew it was of no use, I should still try, I guess. But I got up and went over to the plane wreck, and as I approached, I could see flames through the smoke. The pilot, in a leather jacket and cap, walked up and looked at me rather dazedly and asked why all of his passengers, should be picked as the one to be saved. So why him out of all his passengers should be picked as the one to be saved? I asked this question to myself, and then the valve closed. So in the beginning of this vision, when he's talking about the valve, I think that's that hole that opens up where he can see like these precog visions, July 24th, 1959. I'm about to leave on what may be the first of 4 plane trips. This first will be to North Carolina. And at the thought of the trip, I have a shaky feeling. This has made me pause to think, and in view of other incidents, to review the experience released on July 5th, 1959. Yeah, can you imagine like having that dream or that precognition, and then you have to take a plane somewhere after that? What's up, Ava? I probably wouldn't get on the plane, but I'm always slightly concerned when I travel by airplane, as I believe everyone is. I do not think anything is going to happen on the North Carolina trip, but I may have the wrong interpretation. But what do I do if a similar incident occurs at the beginning of one of these 3 trips? An exact parallel to the July 5th, 59 incident. Do I get off the plane, or is it impossible to break the pattern? My reading states that I will survive, but survival may mean, in this case, a death transition. Or that I see death not as death, but I am still, quote, alive. I honestly don't know what I will do. I'd be thinking the exact same thing, man. If I had that precog dream and I was the only one to survive the trip, flying to the wires and I survived, and then I really have to take a plane trip, I'd be thinking all the same shit he's thinking. However, to all who love me, and I hope there are many, in the event that there is such an incident and that the proper interpretation means that I do experience a death transition rather than actually continuing life here, please do not be unhappy over it, for I honestly deeply feel that it is a transition, and as much as I will regret the many things that I would never do here, some deep nostalgia, some great longing that I've tried to fulfill in a fumbling way here, I believe will again become actually if I go home, quote, home, for more than ever. I believe that the physical body is but a machine for the use of the I. Therefore, once I have departed, the body should mean nothing. No grave, no vault. The body is such as unimportant, but the I am not there. So he's actually, this is the notes he's writing down, okay, at the time. I'm wondering, I'm like, damn, why? It sounds like he's writing a will or something. By the same token, because of my interest, if any such event should occur, the, quote, I will try to establish communication with those who are interested. What could prevent this, and it is certainly a possibility, is that the other plane place may offer the same questions as here. There may be more important matters there. I don't know. I can't promise, but rest assured those who know me will have little difficulty in recognizing an actual communication. This is not in the least intended to be morbid, and perhaps I am overly sensitive these days, but I simply want to have it on record, so that in some way others may be enlightened if it comes to pass. I do not want this to occur, and I don't feel I'm ready and the thought of going through it makes me very contemplative and sober. Yet I am at least partially prepared for it. Dude, so this note right here that he's writing, so he had this dream about this airplane thing where he's flying under the wires and he lives, and then he's about to get on an airplane for real. This note right here is him making kind of like a last, my last wishes or last thoughts or something before I might die, but I don't know if I'm going to die. That's how like powerful his premonition was, or to him anyways. And I think what's cool about this particular note is that he's like, listen, if for some reason I do pass away, I'm going to try to communicate with the ones I love. And you guys will know me. You'll know how I'll do it. And then I'll do it. I'm at least partially prepared for it, he said. That's pretty cool. It's pretty deep, though. All right. October 23rd, 1959. This is written some 12 weeks after the previous entry. 4 of the 12 weeks were spent in the hospital, the remainder in a recuperative period at home. So it sounds like his premonition, something actually happened. But first things first, the previous entry found me concerned with what seemed to be a problem of portent and the definition of survival. By comparison with the, quote, dream, here's how it actually worked out. Recognition 1. I started on the trip as indicated, a trip to North Carolina. The first indication of similarity occurred when I got into the bus that takes passengers from New York Airline Terminal to Newark Airport. I entered and sat down on the right and in the second seat from the front, and sitting there, I was overwhelmed with a sense of familiarity. It was the position I was in relative to the door and the pattern of the door rail and the door shield. This made me alert as I thoroughly recognized this placement, and he puts that in quotations, as what I originally interpreted in the precognition as the airplane. It was not the airplane, it was the bus to the airport. Recognition number 2, 4 men entered the bus, 3 in dark suits, 1 in light, laughing and joking. In his earlier cognition, he saw 3 black men and 1 white guy, and they were laughing and joking. Recognition 3, a woman took the seat directly in front of me, and she became very uncomfortable and agitated. However, it was not because of me, but because of the porter's handlings of one of her packages outside. Same thing in his precognition. He had a woman sit in front of him who got upset. Recognition 4, the impression of my friend Dee Dee standing by the door waiting, the last to get on. I looked out where the bus driver was waiting beside the door for any last-minute passengers. His face and build reminded me instantly of my friend, enough to be his brother. Photographic verification of this was to come. But the mind, when unable to identify, truly picks the nearest thing to it in the mind's experience. He then got in, closed the door, and last to enter, and slipped into the driver's seat almost directly opposite me. Recognition 5. In taking the Jersey Turnpike, the bus, quote, flies low and slow. For that could be the impression if compared to flying. So in his dream, he had to fly under the wires, right? In actual reality, he's recognizing this because he's taken the turnpike. Everything is kind of the same. This is weird. This is kind of trippy, though. The turnpike is built over most of the surrounding streets and roads, and as I looked at the unfolding roads and curving boulevards as we traveled above them, the instant sense of familiarity and recognition came again. Only it was not the airplane, the original mistaken concept, but the bus. Recognition 6. At the airport, in the dream, I was quite alert after the early signs. The plane was late in arriving, so waited around the lobby. As I sat on a bench, I heard a woman's voice speaking of east and west concourse over the PA system. The hollowness of the sound was again strongly familiar, east and west, left and right. Recognition 7. When the plane finally did load, I momentarily debated whether or not to take it. Not from fear, but because of the uncertainty of what survival meant. I finally decided that it was unavoidable, that if I waited for a second flight, it would only prolong the incident. I boarded the plane, very alert, and we taxied out for takeoff. Then the hostess announced on the intercom that we would fly at 6,000 feet. That confirmed the low altitude. We finally took off and promptly ran into a thunderstorm with a great deal of lightning on display. So that could be like the electric wires. This confirmed my impression of an under-the-wires, quote, electricity or flight, long a recognizable symbol to me. And midway during the storm, the pilot decided to change altitude. This was not announced, but we flew up out of the storm and landed in North Carolina without incident. Upon landing, I decided that my interpretation of the accident was wrong and promptly forgot about the whole thing. 4 days later, on a Monday morning, in the middle of a quiet, friendly chat in an office, I suffered what was later diagnosed to be a heart attack or a coronary occlusion and was taken to the hospital. I did not believe it was a heart attack and had no idea that it was until I was informed of it after an examination in the hospital, complete with EKG. It took much persuading to tell me that it was so, and for a reason. In every physical examination I ever had, including 2 the previous week by 2 different insurance doctors, my heart was always pronounced very sound with such statements as, well, you'll never have to worry about your heart, and that's the one thing you won't die of, any heart problems. My mind was thoroughly conditioned against that possibility. It seems that my mind would not accept the precognitive inference of a heart attack. This seemed impossible. Therefore, it selected a catastrophe that was possible in its memory experience. Remember the airplane crash. And the mind takes the nearest seem-alike. Thus, the heart attack came through in the form of an airplane crash, which was acceptable as a possibility. The 4 weeks in the hospital were eased by use of suggestive therapy on recorded tape, which worked wonders with my morale and seemed to speed my recovery. No experiences of a psychic nature came about in the hospital, which I finally deduced was caused by the sedatives or barbiturates, which were given to me every 3 hours. At home, my recovery followed a standard procedure with no recurring symptoms to date. And my mouth is dry. I don't know why. It's pretty crazy that his mind is giving him all these symbols to interpret something that's about to happen in his life like that, though. That means time doesn't really exist in that realm, right? Wherever his precognition thing happened. It goes without saying that I observed very intently after that when the valve decided to open, but each time the vision presented fitted exactly with events that occurred days, months, or even years later. Examples of these include a visual description of the interior of a house, including paint and trim that was selected by my wife for us in a southern city. I recognized it immediately, and it was identical to the description in the notes made 2 years previously. Most unusual was the fact that at the time of the precognition, we had no plans or intentions of moving south. Another was the 5 minutes before the broadcast of a recorded program. The valve opened, and I saw, and he puts that in quotations, the tape breaking sharply and the reels running wildly. Some 10 minutes later, during the broadcast, the tape did break and was hastily reset. Such breakage had never happened before during a broadcast, so this was not a common concern. Further, I'd made all editing splices myself and knew they were right and tight. Yeah, back then in radio, remember Robert Monroe worked in radio, and back then they used a tape reel. It was looked like a big movie reel thing, and they would splice the tape together. The break was caused by a splice made by someone else who had used the tape previously. A third time in the office, the valve opened to reveal a red light with the words oil pressure, in quotations, and an hour later, driving home in a nearly new car, the red oil light warning started to flash. This is pretty cool that this is happening to him, though. Again, this was not a subconscious worry, but the car had less than 500 miles since it was new and had just been checked. The new car had an oil leak, something one does not expect or worry about with a new automobile. There are some 18 more, all of which are personal incidents of varied magnitude, previewed via the valve and later coming to pass exactly as noted, allowing for minor errors and interpretation. To date, a pattern of consistency has been established. H, the hissing sound, plus V, the valve opening sensation, equals F, or future event vision. So what he's saying here is, remember what he said before, like he would hear this roaring, hissing sound in his head, and then this door would open, which he's calling the valve, and then he would see this vision. I don't know if you would call that a dream or whatever, but anyways, it's definitely precognition though. On the premise that this formula has been applicable and proved 22 times, what of the other cases listed in the notes where F has not yet taken place? Without further comment, here are some where the formula has not been proved of as of this writing. It just hasn't been proved, or it hasn't happened yet. August 3rd, 1960. This air hiss, the noise, then the valve. An airplane passes overhead, obviously in trouble with flaps and landing gear lowered. It crashes behind a nearby hill, and my family and I rush over to help. When we get there, the plane is burning slowly with a deep red glow. I recognize this glow and the slow burning as something different than an ordinary gasoline fire, and warn the others to stay back so they not be injured by it, as there is nothing we can do for the dead occupants. That's one of the visions. November the 5th, 1961, again, the air hiss, the valve opens, and I am standing alone outside my house. The sky is mostly clear with a broken cloud over to the north, or the cloud cover to the north. I see a group of aircraft emerge from the cloud cover just above it. They approach, and I note that they are not typical aircraft or rockets. Behind the first wave is a row after row of strange aircrafts, literally hundreds of them. They are not like any airplanes I've seen before. No wings are visible, and each machine is gigantic, some 3,000 feet across. Each is shaped like the head of an arrow, V-shaped, but with no fuselage, as in our swept-wing airplanes. The V-shape is not a lifting surface, but houses the occupants in 2 or 3 decks. They sail majestically overhead, and I feel a tingle of awe at the mighty power they represent. I also feel fear because I somehow know that these are not man-made. These are all his weird visions that didn't come true, too. That kind of sounds like spacecraft or something, though, don't it? October 20th, 1962. The air hisses again, the valve opens, and I am with other people in a suburban street. Looking up, I see what appears to be airplanes through a large break in the clouds. I take a closer look and realize these are a type of aircraft I have never seen before, evidently powered by something other than propellers or jets. The impression is of a unique form of rockets, but not chemical. 3 of the aircraft dive down in descending turn, and I can see they have black sides and a white square windows, but no wings to speak of. The 3 make a low pass over a nearby street. Houses and buildings collapse in their wake, not from bombs, but from something emitted from the machines themselves. We all dive for a ditch for safety. June 12th, 1963, again, I hear the air hiss, the valve opens, and my family and I are in a situation where the whole population of the city we live in is trying to leave. Gasoline is unavailable. Electric power has been shut off. There is a great sense of fatality among everyone. It doesn't seem to be the product of atomic war, and there is no concern as to radioactive fallout. There is, principally, a feeling of doom and the breakup of civilization as we know it due to something momentous having taken place, a factor beyond human ability to control. April 11th, 1964. Again, the air hisses, the valve opens. My family and I are in a large city, and there seems to be great trouble. Everyone's trying to leave. I leave what seems to be an apartment to try to find some way for us to get to the country. Out in the street, the whole city is in turmoil and panic, with cars stalled and jammed together much like an anthill that has been disturbed. There are many more personal, generic, specific locales worldwide. Only time will bring confirmation, and I hope some of these are hallucinations. And that's the end of chapter 11. Damn, we went through 4 chapters this time. Yeah, I wonder what started causing these precognitions. So the guy goes through some stuff, and then I guess maybe he just opened it up. I don't know, man. Pattern recognition. Yeah, I've had that experience before. Maybe not as much as Robert has, but I've had like a dream. I've had a dream about something, most definitely. I don't know I guess you could call it a dream. And then nothing of big importance or anything. But later that day or later that week, I find myself doing the exact same damn thing I dreamed about. Like, that's happened. But I think he's at a level like where he's seeing parallel, like, almost like you're seeing the cause and effect of time ripples or parallel consequences in worlds all at once. And his brain is like maybe interpreting all of them, and some of them happen and some of them don't. Who the hell knows? Cold War mentality. Hell yeah. So the next chapter 12 is round holes and square pegs. I'll try to pick that up tomorrow night. But I told you guys, man, this stuff gets really, really weird. And still, out of all the weird stuff we read tonight, when you hear people talk about conscious exploration and out-of-body experiences and they kind of know the answers to everything, like clearly, in this case, that would seem quite the opposite, doesn't it? It gets weirder, but I think he gets back to doing the out-of-body experience and stuff. I think, but we'll pick it back up tomorrow night, same time, hopefully. I'll try to be on at 9 Central Time, which is 10 Eastern, and grab the book. If you want to support the show, you can listen to the book. That's what I do every year. I listen to the Audible book. There's a link in the description where you can get like an Audible free trial. You can listen to the book, download it, cancel your trial. But if you don't cancel the trial, you'll help out the show. Same thing with Base 44. Like, build an app just by telling it how to build it. You don't even have to know any code or anything. Same thing. If you end up, you can use that service for free and build your own app with it. If you don't use it, that's cool. If you upgrade and want to use more of it, like longer, you don't have to. I'm building an app right now. I'm not even paying for it. I use the free service. But if you do use the paid service, that'll help support the show too. It's fun to build apps without having to know code. You just tell it how to build it. Anyways, good night, y'all. We'll do the reading again tomorrow night. Take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. Love ya.
Tombstones climbing up the sky to claim the boredom and the whine of the radiator, to freeze the fates that intertwine, unresolved and undefined in this echo chamber. Once you've given up the ghost, just like Lazarus, you'll know there's an operator, some strange passenger inside. To that strange power I'm resigned like an iron anchor. I'm just a ghost in your stereo, the fading memory of a shipwreck in the undertow. You're just a lost song I wrote, and I'm just a ghost in your stereo.